Hello and welcome. Do you want to successfully complete the C201 OA exam? Then you are in the right place. Our website has free questions and answers for the C201 OA exam. We know OA exams are tough, so our guides and practice questions are all free. With over 100 plus success stories, we have proven our videos will help you pass your exam on the first attempt. In this video, we will cover questions from economics, management strategy, operations management, information systems, marketing strategy. So let's get started.
Question 1. A regional coffee chain raises the price of its medium latte from $3 to $4. And over the next few weeks, the number of lattes sold each day falls noticeably. Nothing else in the local market changed during this time. Which economic concept best describes what happened in the market for lattes? Your options are A change in demand caused by a shift in consumer tastes. B. A decrease in supply caused by higher production costs. C. A change in quantity demanded caused by the product's own price. D. A change in demand caused by a rise in the price of a substitute. Which one is it? Pause the video if you need more time. The correct answer is C. A change in quantity demanded caused by the product's own price. C is correct because only the product's own price changed. So buyers simply moved to a different point on the same demand curve. A change in a good's own price always produces a change in quantity demanded, which is a movement along the curve rather than a shift of it. A is wrong because a change in demand requires a non-price factor such as tastes, income, or the number of buyers. Taste did not change here. The price did, so the whole curve does not shift. B is wrong because supply did not change because nothing affected sellers' cost or ability to produce. The decline in sales came from buyers reacting to a higher price, not from a leftward shift in supply. D is wrong because no substitute's price moved in this scenario. The only thing that changed was the latte's own price, which affects quantity demanded, not demand. One of the most tested distinctions in macroeconomics is the difference between a change in demand and a change in quantity demanded. These phrases sound nearly identical, but they describe completely different events on a demand diagram. A change in quantity demanded happens when the product's own price moves and nothing else changes. Buyers simply slide from one point to another along the same demand curve, which stays exactly where it was drawn. When an outside force acts on buyers, the entire curve relocates. It shifts right when buyers want more at every price and left when they want less. The whole relationship moves rather than the buyer simply traveling along it. 6 outside forces can shift an entire demand curve: income, tastes and preferences, the number of buyers, prices of substitute goods, prices of complementary goods, and expectations about future prices. None of these is the good's own price. Whenever a scenario describes falling sales or rising purchases, ask one question: did the product's own price change? Or did something else change buyer behavior? Own price means movement along the curve. Anything else means the whole curve shifted. Question 2. A widely publicized medical study reports that eating walnuts daily lowers the risk of heart disease. Within a month, grocery stores across the country find that at every price, shoppers want to buy more walnuts than they did before, which best describes this change in the walnut market. Your options are A change in demand that shifts the entire demand curve to the right. B, a change in quantity demanded that is only a movement along the existing curve. C, an increase in supply caused by improved farming technology. D, a movement to a new point caused solely by the price of walnuts. Take a second. Which answer would you pick? The correct answer is A, a change in demand that shifts the entire demand curve to the right. A is correct because a non-price factor, a change in consumer taste driven by new health information, made buyers want more walnuts at every price. When something other than the good's own price changes buying behavior, the whole demand curve shifts, which is a change in demand. B is wrong because A movement along the curve happens only when the good's own price changes. Here, buyers want more at every price, which can only be shown by shifting the entire curve, not sliding along it. C is wrong because supply involves sellers' cost and ability to produce, neither of which changed. The study changed what buyers want, so the effect falls on demand, not supply. D is wrong because the price of walnuts is not what changed buyer behavior. A health study altered taste, a non-price determinant, so this is a shift of demand rather than a price-driven movement. A change in demand means the entire demand curve relocates, not because the good's own price moved, but because some outside force changed how much buyers want at every price. Understanding what drives these shifts is the core skill here. 5 forces can shift demand: income, tastes and preferences, the number of buyers in the market, the price of related goods, and expectations about the future. When any one of these changes, the whole curve moves, rightward if buyers want more, leftward if they want less. Income is especially important because it affects different goods differently. For normal goods, more income means more demand. For inferior goods, high income actually lowers demand as shoppers trade up. A single raise can push one curve right and another left. Related goods shift demand through 2 mechanisms. Substitutes replace each other, so a price hike on one boosts demand for the other. Complements are used together, so a price hike on one drags demand for its partner downward. Once you identify a demand shift, the market outcome follows a reliable rule. A rightward shift raises both equilibrium price and quantity sold. A leftward shift lowers both. Price and quantity always move together when demand shifts. A pattern worth memorizing for any scenario question. Question 3. A major semiconductor plant that supplies chips to many electronics manufacturers is forced to shut down for several months after a serious equipment failure. As a result, far fewer chips reach the market at every price. Which best describes the effect on the market for semiconductor chips? Your options are: A. Demand decreases because buyers lose interest in chips. B. Quantity demanded increases as buyers rush to purchase. C. Demand increases because the shortage makes chips more desirable. D. Supply decreases, shifting the supply curve to the left. Before I reveal it, which one do you think is right? The correct answer is D. Supply decreases, shifting the supply curve to the left. D is correct because a disruption to a producer reduces the quantity available at every price, which is a leftward shift of the supply curve. Fewer inputs and less production capacity affect sellers, so the correct concept is a decrease in supply. A is wrong because demand reflects buyers' willingness and ability to purchase, and nothing changed about buyers here. The shutdown affected a seller, so supply fell rather than demand. B is wrong because quantity demanded changes only in response to the good's own price, not a factory closure. A supply disruption does not by itself raise how much buyers want at the current price. C is wrong because a shortage may push the price up, but it does not shift the demand curve. The root cause is a fall in supply from the production disruption, not a rise in demand. Supply describes sellers' willingness and ability to provide a product. Understanding what moves the supply curve and why is essential for reading any market correctly. When a product's own price changes, sellers simply move along their existing supply curve. That's a change in quantity supplied. But when outside forces act on sellers, the entire curve shifts, resetting the whole relationship between price and quantity. Several non-price forces shift the supply curve. Technology improvements shifted right, while higher input costs shifted left. The number of sellers, taxes and subsidies, future price expectations, and natural events like droughts or storms each change how much sellers can offer at any given price. When supply shifts right, more goods available, equilibrium price falls and quantity rises. When supply shifts left, goods become scarcer, price climbs and quantity falls. This inverse movement of price and quantity is the fingerprint of a supply shift, distinguishing it from a demand shift where price and quantity move together. The most common mistake is confusing a decrease in supply with a decrease in demand. They look similar in outcome but have opposite origins. Always ask whether buyers or sellers were affected. Production disruptions belong to supply, while income and taste changes belong to demand. Question 4. In a national market, 4 large wireless carriers together serve almost all subscribers. Each carrier watches the others closely, and when one introduces a new pricing plan, the others quickly respond with similar offers. Which market structure does this describe? Your options are A. Pure competition, B. Oligopoly, C. Monopolistic competition, D. Monopoly. What's your answer? Commit to one before I continue. The correct answer is B. Oligopoly. B is correct because an oligopoly is a market dominated by a few large firms whose decisions are highly interdependent. The small number of carriers and their habit of reacting to one another's moves are the defining features of the structure. A is wrong because pure competition has a very large number of sellers offering identical products, none of whom can influence price. 4 dominant carriers that react to each other do not fit that description. C is wrong because monopolistic competition has many sellers offering differentiated products, not just a handful of dominant firms. The defining trait here is the small number of interdependent competitors. D is wrong because a monopoly has only one seller of a product with no close substitutes. This market has 4 major competitors, so it cannot be a monopoly. Economists classify markets into 4 structures based on how many sellers exist, how similar their products are, and how much price control any one seller holds. Together they form a spectrum from maximum competition to none at all. At one end, pure competition features many sellers with identical products and no price control. Monopolistic competition keeps many sellers but adds differentiation. Oligopoly narrows the field to a few dominant, interdependent firms. Monopoly places a single seller with no close substitute at the far end. The key structural difference between oligopoly and monopolistic competition is interdependence. In monopolistic competition, no single rival's move forces your hand. In oligopoly, so few competitors exist that each firm must anticipate and react to the others' every pricing and strategy decision. The fastest way to classify any scenario is to ask 3 questions. How many sellers? How similar are the products? And do competitors actively react to each other? Those answers point directly to the correct structure every time. When a scenario mentions a few large firms shadowing each other's moves, that signals oligopoly, not monopolistic competition. Keeping these distinguishing traits clear lets you classify any market structure quickly and confidently. Question 5. A company sells table salt, a product that has very few substitutes, costs each household only a small amount per year, and is widely considered a necessity. Management is weighing a modest price increase and wants to predict the effect on total revenue. Based on the price elasticity of demand for salt, what is the most likely result? Your options are A. Total revenue will fall sharply because demand for salt is highly elastic. B. Total revenue will stay exactly the same because price never affects revenue. C. Total revenue will rise because demand is inelastic and quantity sold will barely fall. D. Total revenue will fall because buyers will quickly switch to close substitutes. Pick one. Trust your gut. Here's your chance to test yourself. The correct answer is C. Total revenue will rise because demand is inelastic and quantity sold will barely fall. C is correct because salt has few substitutes, is a necessity, and takes a tiny share of the household budget, all of which make its demand inelastic. When demand is inelastic, a price increase causes only a small drop in quantity, so total revenue rises. A is wrong because highly elastic demand belongs to products with many substitutes or that consume a large share of income, which does not describe salt. With few substitutes, salt's demand is inelastic, so revenue rises rather than falls. B is wrong because price changes do affect total revenue and the direction depends on elasticity. Claiming revenue never responds to price ignores the core relationship between elasticity and revenue. D is wrong because few substitutes exist for salt, so buyers cannot easily switch away when the price rises. Because demand is inelastic, quantity barely changes and revenue increases. Price elasticity of demand goes beyond the basic law that higher prices reduce quantity demanded. Well, it captures how strongly buyers actually respond. Two products can both follow that law yet react in completely different degrees. And that difference has real consequences for a firm's revenue. When demand is elastic, a price change sends buyers fleeing or flooding in. When demand is inelastic, quantity sold barely moves. The single biggest driver of which type you face is the availability of close substitutes. The more substitutes exist, the more elastic the demand. Substitutes aren't the only factor. Necessities tend to be inelastic while luxuries are elastic. Items that take a large share of a household's budget are more elastic than cheap ones. And over longer time horizons, demand grows more elastic as buyers find alternatives. Elasticity matters most because it determines what happens to total revenue. Price multiplied by quantity sold. When demand is inelastic and price rises, the small drop in volume is more than offset by the higher price. So revenue climbs. When demand is elastic and price rises, buyers flee and revenue falls. The direction flips entirely depending on which type of demand the firm faces. Table salt has few substitutes, is a necessity, and costs households almost nothing, so its demand is strongly inelastic, and a price increase lifts revenue. A single soda brand surrounded by rivals is elastic. Raise the price and buyers switch, sending revenue down. The reliable anchor, the more substitutes, the more elastic. Question 6. A bank teller loses her job after her branch installs automated kiosks and mobile apps that handle most routine transactions. Her current skills no longer match the kinds of positions the bank now needs to fill. Which type of unemployment is she experiencing? Your options are A. Structural unemployment, B. Cyclical unemployment, C. Frictional unemployment, D. Seasonal unemployment. Which would you go with? Lock it in before the reveal. The correct answer is A. Structural unemployment. A is correct because structural unemployment occurs when workers' skills no longer match employers' needs, often because of technology or industry shifts. Automation made her existing skills obsolete for the available roles, which is the textbook cause of structural unemployment. B is wrong because cyclical unemployment results from a downturn in the overall economy, such as a recession. Her job loss came from a technology change at the bank, not from a weak economy. C is wrong because frictional unemployment covers people temporarily between jobs or newly searching, such as recent graduates. Her unemployment stems from a lasting skills mismatch, not a brief transition. D is wrong because seasonal unemployment happens when a job exists only during certain times of the year, like holiday retail work. Bank teller work is year-round, so this is not seasonal. Not all unemployment has the same cause, and economists sort it into 4 distinct types based on why a worker is out of a job. Each type signals something different about the economy and calls for a different response. Frictional unemployment is short-term. recent graduates or workers searching for a better fit. Structural arises when technology or industry change leaves workers' skills outdated. Cyclical tracks the business cycle, rising during recessions and easing in recoveries. Seasonal follows the calendar, affecting workers whose jobs only exist part of the year. The most commonly confused pair is structural and cyclical. The dividing line is this: if the cause is a lasting mismatch between a worker's skills and available jobs, it is structural. If the cause is the entire economy contracting, it is cyclical. Signal words make classification faster. Just graduated or between jobs points to frictional. Replaced by automation or skills no longer match points to structural. Laid off during a downturn points to cyclical, and only works in summer points to seasonal. Every classification question comes down to one thing: the root cause. Identify whether the problem is a brief search, a skills gap, a recession, or a seasonal pattern, and the right type follows immediately. Question 7. Inflation has been climbing for several months, and the central bank wants to slow the rise in prices. It decides to reduce the money supply, which pushes interest rates higher and makes borrowing more expensive. Which policy is the central bank using? Your options are: A. Expansionary fiscal policy carried out by Congress. B. Restrictive monetary policy carried out by the Federal Reserve. C. Expansionary monetary policy that lowers the cost of borrowing. D. Contractionary fiscal policy that raises taxes and cuts spending. Don't overthink it. Which one feels right? The correct answer is B. Restrictive monetary policy carried out by the Federal Reserve. B is correct because restrictive monetary policy reduces the money supply and raises interest rates to fight inflation, and it is conducted by the Federal Reserve. Shrinking the money supply to cool rising prices is exactly what this policy does. A is wrong because fiscal policy involves government spending and taxes set by Congress and the President, not the money supply. The central bank controls monetary policy, so this action is not fiscal. C is wrong because expansionary monetary policy increases the money supply and lowers rates to boost growth, the opposite of what is described. Fighting inflation calls for a restrictive stance, not an expansionary one. D is wrong because although contractionary fiscal policy can also cool the economy, it works through taxes and spending decided by Congress. Here the central bank is adjusting the money supply, which is monetary policy. Governments steer the economy with two broad levers: monetary policy and fiscal policy. Keeping these straight is one of the most testable ideas in macroeconomics. And the most common mistake is confusing which branch controls which tool. Monetary policy is run by the Federal Reserve, which works through the money supply and interest rates. Fiscal policy is run by Congress and the President, and it works through government spending and taxes. These two pairs never cross. Expansionary monetary policy increases the money supply, lowers interest rates, and encourages borrowing to boost growth. Restrictive or contractionary policy shrinks the money supply, raises rates, makes borrowing costlier, and is designed to cool inflation. Both directions are always controlled by the central bank. When the Fed pushes rates down, loans become cheaper, so firms expand and consumers buy homes and cars, lifting total spending. When rates rise, borrowing grows costlier, firms delay projects, consumers hold back, and spending cools, directly restraining inflation. The memory hook is direct. Expansionary policy expands the money supply to grow the economy, while restrictive policy restricts it to restrain inflation. When a scenario names the Fed adjusting rates, that is monetary. When Congress changes spending or taxes, that is fiscal. Question 8. A factory runs its assembly line with very little wasted material and a low cost per unit. Yet it is producing items that customers no longer want, so the goods sit unsold. The plant uses its resources well, but is not achieving the goal that matters. Which quality is the plant lacking? Your options are A. Efficiency, B. Centralization, C. Span of control, D. Effectiveness. Got a guess? Lock it in. The correct answer is D. Effectiveness. D is correct because effectiveness means doing the right things, achieving the goals and outcomes that matter. The plant fails on effectiveness because it is making products no one wants, even though it does so cheaply. A is wrong because efficiency means doing things right by minimizing waste and cost, which the plant already does well. The problem is not its use of resources, but its choice of what to produce. B is wrong because centralization describes where decision-making authority sits, not where the goals are met. It does not address the mismatch between what the plant makes and what customers want. C is wrong because span of control refers to how many employees a manager supervises. It has nothing to do with whether the plant is producing the right product. Two words that appear constantly in management, efficiency and effectiveness, sound almost identical but test completely different ideas. Understanding the gap between them is essential for any manager and for any exam. Efficiency asks the resource question. Are we squeezing maximum output from our inputs, keeping waste low and costs lean? Effectiveness asks the goal question. Are we working toward the right objectives and actually reaching them? A manager must answer yes to both. The most instructive cases are where the two diverge. A factory can be efficient, low cost per unit, minimal waste, while producing goods no customer wants anymore. That is efficient but not effective. A team can launch a product customers love while overspending wildly, effective but not efficient. Strong management closes both gaps at once. The shortest way to keep the pair straight, efficiency is about resources and means doing things right, while effectiveness is about goals and means doing the right things. A print shop that produces brochures faster than any competitor, while its clients have moved to digital, is highly efficient and badly ineffective at the same time. Whenever a scenario stresses low cost, little waste, or high output from few inputs, it is testing efficiency. Whenever it stresses meeting objectives, satisfying customer, or delivering what the market wants, it is testing effectiveness. Keep those two anchors clear, and this distinction becomes straightforward. Question 9. During a strategic planning session, a management team identifies a fast-growing overseas market the company could expand into and a newly arrived competitor that could take away sales. In a SWOT analysis, how should these two items be classified? Your options are A. Both are external factors. The growing market is an opportunity and the competitor is a threat. B. Both are internal factors. The growing market is a strength and the competitor is a weakness. C. The growing market is a strength and the competitor is a threat. D. The growing market is an opportunity and the competitor is a weakness. Which one is it? Pause the video if you need more time. The correct answer is A. Both are external factors. The growing market is an opportunity and the competitor is a threat. A is correct because opportunities and threats make up the external half of a SWOT analysis, describing conditions in the world outside the company. A growing market is an opportunity and a new competitor is a threat, and both arise from outside the firm. B is wrong because strengths and weaknesses are internal traits of the company itself, such as its capabilities or limitations. A market and a competitor exist outside the firm, so they are external, not internal. C is wrong because a growing market is an external opportunity, not an internal strength. Mislabeling it as a strength confuses the internal and external sides of the analysis. D is wrong because a new competitor is an external threat, not an internal weakness. Weaknesses describe shortcomings inside the company, not rivals in the marketplace. SWOT is a strategic planning tool that maps 4 characteristics of a company before any strategy is chosen. The entire power of the framework rests on one critical distinction: whether each item belongs to the internal half or the external half. Strengths and weaknesses are internal. They describe resources, capabilities, and limitations inside the firm itself. Opportunities and threats are external. They describe conditions in the market and broader environment that the firm does not control but must respond to. Picture the matrix split horizontally down the middle. Everything above the line lives inside the company's own walls, strengths and weaknesses. Everything below that line exists out in the world, opportunities and threats. Placing an item in the wrong half is the most common exam error. Apply a single test to every item. Does it live inside the company, among its own resources and capabilities, or does it live outside, in the market or environment? Only after settling internal against external do you decide whether the item helps or harms the firm. A growing overseas market is not a strength. The company doesn't own or control it. A new competitor is not a weakness. It exists outside the firm. Nail the internal versus external line first, and the rest of SWOT falls into place. Question 10. A middle manager develops a 6-month plan to roll out a new customer relationship system across the marketing department, translating the company's broad 5-year growth strategy into specific actions for her area. Which type of planning is she performing? Your options are A. Strategic planning, B. Contingency planning, C. Tactical planning, D. Operational planning. Take a second. Which answer would you pick? The correct answer is C. Tactical planning. C is correct because tactical planning is the medium-term work of middle managers who translate broad strategy into specific actions for a functional area. A 6-month departmental rollout that carries out the company strategy is a textbook example. A is wrong because strategic planning is the long-term company-wide direction set by top management. The manager here is implementing that strategy for one department, not setting the overall direction. B is wrong because contingency planning prepares backup plans for unexpected events or emergencies. The rollout is a planned initiative, not a response to a possible crisis. D is wrong because operational planning covers the short-term, day-to-day tasks handled by first-line supervisors. A 6-month plan that implements company strategy is broader than daily operational work. Planning is the first of the 4 management functions, and it happens at every level of an organization. There are 4 distinct types: strategic, tactical, operational, and contingency, each matched to a different manager and a different time horizon. Strategic planning is done by senior executives setting the company's overall direction over years. Tactical planning is done by middle managers who translate that strategy into departmental actions over months. Operational planning belongs to frontline supervisors managing daily schedules and assignments. Contingency planning prepares backup responses to unexpected events and can be done at any level. Visualizing the hierarchy makes the relationships clear. Strategic sits at the top, tactical in the middle, and operational at the front line. Contingency planning is unique because it cuts across all 3 tiers. Any manager at any level can be responsible for a backup plan. The pair most often confused is strategic versus tactical. The dividing line is simple. If a manager is setting the broad direction, that is strategic. If a manager is taking that direction and turning it into specific departmental actions, that is tactical. Daily execution of tasks at the front line is operational. When identifying any plan, look for 2 signals: the time frame and who is making it. Long-term and company-wide means strategic. Medium-term and departmental means tactical. Short-term and daily means operational. Backup for an emergency at any level means contingency. Question 11. Employees at a project-driven firm report that they regularly receive conflicting instructions from two different bosses, the functional department head and their project leader, and they are unsure whose priorities come first. Which organizational structure is most likely in place? Your options are A. Line structure, B. Matrix structure, C. Network structure, D. Line and staff structure. Before I reveal it, which one do you think is right? The correct answer is B. Matrix structure. B is correct because a matrix structure has employees report to two managers at once, a functional manager and a project manager. The conflicting instructions and unclear priorities are the classic role conflict weakness that dual reporting creates. A is wrong because a line structure is a single clear chain of command in which each employee answers to one boss. It would not produce the two-boss conflict described here. C is wrong because a network structure is a small core company that coordinates outside partners, not a setup defined by dual internal reporting. It does not explain conflicting orders from two internal managers. D is wrong because in a line and staff structure, staff specialists advise line managers but do not share command authority over the same employees. The defining trait here is two bosses giving competing orders, which points to a matrix. Every organization arranges its chain of command differently. Four name structures capture the most common patterns, and each carries its own trade-off between simplicity, expertise, and flexibility. The line structure runs one clear chain from top to bottom. Line and staff add specialist advisors alongside that chain. The matrix assigns employees to both a functional manager and a project manager simultaneously, and the network keeps a small core firm while outsourcing work to outside partners. In a matrix, the employee sits at the intersection of two lines of authority. When the functional manager and the project manager set competing priorities, the employee is caught between them. That role conflict is the matrix's defining weakness. When a scenario describes workers receiving clashing directions from two managers, that dual command hallmark points straight at a matrix. Do not confuse it with a divisional structure, which groups units by product or region. That solves a different problem entirely. The matrix structure's signature flaw is its most testable feature: competing orders from two bosses and confusion over whose priorities come first. That symptom is the textbook marker of a matrix under strain. Question 12. A fast-growing retail chain finds that decisions routed through headquarters are too slow for its regional stores, which must respond quickly to local customer preferences. Management wants to push decision-making authority down to local managers. Which approach best fits this need? Your options are A. Centralization to ensure consistent control, B. A mechanistic structure built on strict rules and hierarchy, C. A taller structure with more layers of management, D. Decentralization to improve speed and responsiveness. What's your answer? Commit to one before I continue. The correct answer is D. Decentralization to improve speed and responsiveness. D is correct because decentralization pushes decision-making authority down to lower levels and out toward the customer, which improves speed and responsiveness. A chain that needs quick local decisions should decentralize. A is wrong because centralization keeps decisions at the top to produce consistent control, the opposite of what this chain needs. It would slow local responses rather than speed them up. B is wrong because a mechanistic structure relies on rules and hierarchy and suits stable, control-focused settings. It would make the chain less flexible, not more responsive to local customers. C is wrong because a taller structure adds management layers, which lengthens the chain of command and slows decisions. That works against the goal of faster local responsiveness. How an organization distributes authority shapes both how fast it moves and how consistent it stays. The core choice is between two poles, concentrating decisions at the top or spreading them to the front line. Centralization keeps authority with senior leadership, producing consistency and tight control. Decentralization pushes authority down to managers closer to the work, producing speed and flexibility. Neither is better in the abstract. The right choice depends on what the organization needs most. Centralization pairs naturally with a mechanistic structure, rules, hierarchy, and standardization, and suits organizations with strict compliance or safety demands. Decentralization pairs with an organic structure, collaboration and adaptability, and suits fast-moving firms whose local units must respond to different markets. Structure reinforces the choice. A tall organization with many layers tends to centralize authority and slow decisions, while a flat organization with few layers tends to decentralize and accelerate them. The scenario usually signals the answer. Phrases like consistent control and standard procedures point to centralization, while quick local decisions and adapt to local customers point to decentralization. Identify which the business values more: uniform control or fast local response, and the design follows directly. Question 13. A warehouse manager follows a standing rule to reorder packing boxes automatically whenever stock drops to a set level. The situation is routine and the solution has already been worked out in advance. Which type of decision is this? Your options are A. A program decision based on an established rule. B. A non-program decision requiring judgment and creativity. C. A strategic decision made by top management. D. A contingency decision for an unexpected emergency. Pick one. Trust your gut. Here's your chance to test yourself. The correct answer is A. A program decision based on an established rule. A is correct because a program decision is a routine, repetitive choice handled with an established rule or procedure. Reordering stock automatically at a set level fits this exactly, since the response is predetermined. B is wrong because a non-program decision is unique and complex and demands judgment and creativity, such as entering a new market. Reordering boxes is routine and rule-based, not novel. C is wrong because strategic decisions set long-term, company-wide direction and are made by top managers. A warehouse reorder is an operational matter, not a strategic one. D is wrong because a contingency response addresses an unexpected emergency, but routine reordering is a planned, predictable event. There is no crisis here, so it is not a contingency decision. When managers face decisions, the most important first step is recognizing what kind of decision they're dealing with. The core distinction is whether a situation has been seen before and already has a settled answer, or whether it's genuinely new and demands fresh thinking. Program decisions are routine and repetitive. A rule or procedure already covers them, so the manager simply follows it. Non-program decisions are new and unfamiliar, carrying important consequences that no standing rule can resolve. Picture a warehouse that reorders boxes the moment stock drops to a fixed level. That's a program decision handled entirely by an established rule. Contrast that with a chief executive weighing whether to enter a brand new country, a unique, high-stakes choice that no manual can settle. Certain signal words point directly to the right category. Words like routine, repetitive, and established rule indicate a program decision. Words like new, unique, complex, and important consequences indicate a non-programmed one. Spotting those cues is the fastest way to answer exam questions on this topic. Question 14. An oil refinery takes a single input, crude oil, and breaks it down into many different outputs such as gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. Which type of production system does this describe? Your options are A. A synthetic system, B, an intermittent process. C, an analytic system. D, a flexible manufacturing system. Which would you go with? Lock it in before the reveal. The correct answer is C, an analytic system. C is correct because an analytic system breaks one input down into several different outputs. Refining crude oil into gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel is the standard example of taking one thing apart into many. A is wrong because a synthetic system does the reverse, combining many inputs into one finished product, such as blending ingredients into a perfume. The refinery splits one input apart, so it is analytic, not synthetic. B is wrong because an intermittent process describes the timing of production in batches with starts and stops, not whether inputs are split or combined. It answers a different question than the analytic versus synthetic distinction. D is wrong because a flexible manufacturing system is automated equipment that can be quickly reconfigured to make different products. It describes adaptable machinery, not the breaking of one input into many outputs. Every production process can be described by two independent classifications. The first asks about the direction of transformation, how inputs become outputs. The second asks about timing, whether the line ever stops. Keeping these two questions separate is the key to answering exam problems correctly. An analytic process breaks one input into many outputs. Think of an oil refinery splitting crude oil into gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. A synthetic process combines many inputs into one output, like an automaker assembling thousands of parts into a single car. Picture the analytic system as a fan spreading outward, one raw material separating into many distinct products. The synthetic system is the mirror image, a funnel drawing many separate components together into a single unified product. The timing classification asks whether the line ever stops. Continuous processes run around the clock producing identical goods. Chemical plants and power stations work this way. Intermittent processes start and stop, producing goods in batches with customization possible between runs, like a custom furniture shop. A single operation can carry both labels at once. A refinery is both analytic and continuous. The surest habit is to answer the two classifications separately. First ask which direction the transformation flows, then ask whether production runs non-stop or in batches. Question 15. A project manager overseeing a complex product launch needs a tool that maps all of the interdependent tasks, shows the time estimate for each, and identifies the longest sequence of dependent activities that sets the minimum completion time. Which scheduling tool fits this need? Your options are A. A Gantt chart, B. A PERT chart, C. A balance sheet, D. An organization chart. Don't overthink it. Which one feels right? The correct answer is B, a PERT chart. B is correct because a PERT chart is a network diagram that maps task dependencies and time estimates and reveals the critical path, the longest sequence of dependent tasks. It is built for coordinating complex projects, which matches this need. A is wrong because a Gantt chart is a simple bar chart that shows each task's schedule and progress over time. It is best for straightforward projects and does not map dependencies or highlight a critical path. C is wrong because a balance sheet is a financial statement showing assets, liabilities, and owner's equity. It has nothing to do with scheduling project tasks. D is wrong because an organization chart shows a company's hierarchy and reporting relationships. It does not track task timing or dependencies in a project. Two scheduling tools dominate project management, the Gantt chart and the PERT chart. They share the goal of helping managers plan and monitor work, but they suit very different kinds of projects and highlight different things. A Gantt chart is a bar chart. Each task is a horizontal bar along a timeline, making it easy to see at a glance what's on schedule and what's slipping. A PERT chart is a network diagram that maps every task, attaches a time estimate, and links tasks according to which must finish before others can begin. The PERT chart's defining feature is the critical path, the longest chain of dependent tasks running through the project. This sequence sets the earliest possible finish date. Tasks on the critical path have zero slack, meaning any delay there pushes back the entire project. Gantt charts are the natural choice for straightforward projects where tracking progress against planned dates is the main concerner. PERT charts earn their place on complex projects by exposing the critical path, something a simple bar chart cannot provide. If you see dependencies and critical path, think PERT. The signal words decided, bar chart, schedule, and progress point to Gantt. Network diagram, task dependencies, time estimates, and critical path point to PERT. Anchor the critical path to PERT and you won't confuse them. Question 16. A manufacturer launches an initiative focused specifically on eliminating waste, removing every step in its process that does not add value for the customer in order to improve flow and lower cost. Which quality approach is the manufacturer using? Your options are A. Six Sigma, B. ISO 9000 certification, C. Total quality management, D. Lean. Got a guess? Lock it in. The correct answer is D. Lean. D is correct because lean is the approach centered on eliminating waste by removing non-value added activities to improve flow and reduce cost. The focus on stripping out wasteful steps is the signature of lean. A is wrong because Six Sigma is a data-driven method aimed at reducing defects and process variation, not waste in general. The scenario targets wasteful steps, which is the goal of lean. B is wrong because ISO 9000 is a set of international quality management standards a company can be certified against, not a waste elimination method. It defines how quality is documented and assured rather than how waste is removed. C is wrong because total quality management is a broad, organization-wide culture of continuous quality improvement involving everyone. The narrow focus on cutting waste points specifically to lean rather than the whole company philosophy of TQM. Three quality philosophies show up constantly in operations management and they're easy to mix up. Total quality management, lean, and Six Sigma all pursue better quality, but each one defines its target differently, and that distinction is everything. Total quality management is a broad, organization-wide commitment. Quality is everyone's responsibility, pursued continuously across every department. Lean has a sharper focus, hunting down every step that doesn't add value for the customer and removing it. Six Sigma targets defects and variation, using data and statistical analysis to drive error rates toward near zero. Lean maps every step in a process and asks one question: does the step add value for the customer? Steps labeled excess inventory, waiting time, unnecessary motion, or rework don't earn their place, and Lean removes them to smooth flow and cut cost. The signal words are your shortcut. Company-wide, continuous, and everyone involved point to TQM. Eliminate waste and non-value adding steps point to Lean. Reduce defects and cut variation point to Six Sigma. Read the scenario for which target it names, not just the general idea of better quality. All three approaches improve quality, so the classification always comes down to the specific target. When you see a scenario, ask, is it about company-wide culture, removing waste, or reducing defects? The answer names the philosophy. Question 17. An automaker arranges for parts to arrive at its assembly line exactly when they are needed for production, holding almost no extra stock in order to keep inventory and carrying costs to a minimum. Which inventory approach is this? Your options are A. Just-in-case inventory with a large buffer stock. B. Computer integrated manufacturing. C. Just-in-time inventory. D. Vendor managed inventory. Which one is it? Pause the video if you need more time. The correct answer is C. Just-in-time inventory. C is correct because just-in-time inventory receives materials only as they are needed, minimizing inventory and the cost of carrying it. Parts arriving exactly when required with almost no stock on hand is the defining feature of just-in-time. A is wrong because just-in-case inventory does the opposite by holding buffer stock to guard against shortages. The automaker is deliberately holding almost no stock, so this is not just in case. B is wrong because computer integrated manufacturing links design and production systems into one whole. It is not an inventory timing method. It does not describe when parts arrive relative to production. D is wrong because vendor managed inventory is an arrangement in which the supplier decides how much to ship and replenishes automatically. The scenario describes the timing of arrivals to minimize stock, which is just in time, not who manages the reordering. Inventory management comes down to a fundamental timing question. When should materials arrive relative to when they're actually needed? Two opposing philosophies answer this, and understanding the trade-off between them is the heart of the concept. Just-in-time inventory schedules materials to arrive exactly when production needs them, keeping almost nothing in storage. Just-in-case deliberately holds buffer stock, so materials are always available if demand spikes or a supplier stumbles. Picture an automaker whose parts arrive at the assembly line exactly when needed. Almost no stock on hand, carrying costs kept minimal. That is just-in-time in its purest form. A firm stockpiling a generous reserve of those same parts to guard against supply disruptions is practicing just in case. Just in time is cheaper because warehousing, insurance, and tied up cash all shrink when inventory stays lean. But one late shipment can halt a production line that holds no spare parts. Just in case buys security at the price of higher holding costs. The signal words make identification straightforward. Phrases like minimize inventory and lower carrying cost point to just in time. Buffer stock, safety stock, and guard against shortages point to just in case. A company chooses between them or blends them based on how predictable its supply and demand are. Question 18. A growing company wants to connect its finance, human resources, and operations data so that all departments work from one shared, integrated platform instead of separate, disconnected systems. Which type of information system best meets this need? Your options are A. Enterprise Resource Planning System, B. Decision Support System, C. Transaction Processing System, D. Customer Relationship Management System. Take a second. Which answer would you pick? The correct answer is A. Enterprise Resource Planning System. A is correct because an enterprise resource planning system integrates processes and data across departments such as finance, human resources, and operations into one shared platform. Unifying separate departments onto a single system is exactly what the system does. B is wrong because a decision support system provides models and what-if analysis to help managers evaluate alternatives. It supports individual decisions rather than integrating department-wide data onto one platform. C is wrong because a transaction processing system records routine daily transactions such as sales and payroll. It handles individual transactions, not the integration of data across the whole organization. D is wrong because a customer relationship management system manages customer interactions, leads, and service issues. It focuses on the customer side, not on unifying internal finance, human resources, and operations data. Every business information system has a distinct job, and the fastest way to tell them apart is to match each system to its defining purpose. Let's look at the full family and the clue word that fingerprints each one. There are 6 core systems to know. An ERP integrates departments onto one platform. A TPS records daily transactions. An MIS produces routine reports. A DSS models alternatives. A CRM tracks customer interactions and leads. And a BI system analyzes data for trends and forecasting. The ERP is the most tested system because it is unique in purpose. It exists solely to unify separate departments onto one shared platform. Data entered in finance flows automatically to operations and HR without being rekeyed or reconciled by hand. The exam tests whether you can read the clue word and map it precisely. Integration or one shared platform is the fingerprint of ERP. No other system exists chiefly to unify departments. Routine reports signal MIS, what if analysis signals DSS, and customer leads signal CRM. Because all 6 are information systems, a scenario only separates them through that one precise function it describes. Learn the clue word for each system and the whole family becomes a quick lookup. Question 19. A manager must choose where to build a new plant and wants a system that lets her build models and run what-if scenarios comparing the costs and risks of several possible locations before deciding. Which type of information system is designed for this? Your options are A. Transaction processing system, B. Management information system, C. Enterprise resource planning system, D. Decision support system. Before I reveal it, which one do you think is right? The correct answer is D. Decision support system. D is correct because a decision support system provides models and what-if analysis that help managers evaluate alternatives, such as comparing plant locations under different assumptions. Building scenarios to choose among options is precisely its purpose. A is wrong, because a transaction processing system records routine daily transactions like sales and payroll. It does not model alternatives or support a one-time strategic location choice. B is wrong, because a management information system produces routine reports and dashboards summarizing past performance. It reports standard results rather than building custom what-if scenarios for a decision. C is wrong because an enterprise resource planning system integrates data across departments onto one platform. It unifies operations but is not specifically the modeling tool used to compare decision alternatives. A decision support system occupies a unique space among information systems. Its purpose is not to record events or print standard reports. It exists to help managers model choices and explore possible futures before committing to a course of action. To understand what a DSS does, contrast it with its neighbors. A transaction processing system logs daily business events. A management information system summarizes past results into recurring reports. A decision support system is forward-looking. It models hypothetical situations to support a specific decision. A DSS works by combining data with analytical models. The manager feeds in different assumptions about costs, volumes, risks, or timelines, and the system projects the likely result of each set of inputs, letting the manager compare outcomes side by side. Exam questions signal a DSS through specific clue words. Look for models, what-if analysis, scenarios, and evaluating alternatives. The presence of a genuine decision with multiple options to compare under uncertainty is the definitive tell. Routine reporting or transaction recording would point elsewhere. The most common stumble is confusing a DSS with a management information system, since both serve managers. The dividing line is clear. A management information system delivers standardized reports of known measures, while a decision support system builds custom analysis of hypothetical futures to fit a particular decision. Question 20. A spreadsheet lists thousands of individual sales amounts with no context attached. An analyst then processes those numbers into the conclusion that sales rose 10% in the Southeast. Which term best describes that processed, meaningful conclusion? Your options are A. Raw data, B. Information, C. A database, D. Hardware. What's your answer? Commit to one before I continue. The correct answer is B. Information. B is correct because information is processed as data that has been organized to carry meaning, such as the conclusion that sales rose 10% in a region. The analyst turned context-free numbers into a meaningful finding, which is information. A is wrong because raw data is the unprocessed facts and figures with no context, which describes the original list of sales amounts, not the conclusion. The finished conclusion is more than raw data. C is wrong because a database is an organized collection where data is stored and retrieved, not the meaningful conclusion drawn from it. The spreadsheet might hold data, but the insight itself is information. D is wrong because hardware is the physical equipment of a computer system. It has nothing to do with whether numbers have been turned into a meaningful conclusion. In everyday speech, data and information are used interchangeably, but in business, they mean something precise and different. Understanding the distinction is fundamental to how organizations make decisions. Data is the raw starting point, uninterpreted numbers, names, and figures. Processing transforms that raw material by sorting, calculating, and organizing it. The result is information, facts given context and meaning that can guide a decision. Imagine a spreadsheet of thousands of individual sales amounts. Those numbers are data. When an analyst processes them into the finding that sales rose in the Southeast, that conclusion becomes information, organized, contextual, and decision-ready. Certain signal words separate the two concepts. Raw, unprocessed, and no context point to data. Processed, organized, and meaningful point to information. Related terms like database and big data follow the same logic. Size and storage do not create meaning, only processing does. Keep the direction clear. Data flows in as raw material, and information flows out after processing gives it shape. That transformation is the whole reason businesses build information systems. Question 21. A piece of malicious software spreads automatically from computer to computer across a company network on its own, without attaching itself to a host file or needing a user to run it. Which type of malware behaves this way? Your options are A. A worm, B. A virus, C. A Trojan, D. Ransomware. Pick one. Trust your gut. Here's your chance to test yourself. The correct answer is A. A worm. A is correct because a worm is malware that spreads automatically across systems on its own, without needing to attach to a host file. Self-propagation with no host is the defining behavior of a worm. B is wrong because a virus must attach itself to a host file or program and depends on that host to spread. Because this malware spreads on its own with no host, it is a worm rather than a virus. C is wrong because a Trojan is disguised as legitimate software and relies on tricking a user into running it. The malware here spreads automatically without user action, so it is not a Trojan. D is wrong because ransomware locks or encrypts data and demands payment to release it. The behavior described is automatic spreading, not extortion, so it is a worm. Malware is any software designed to harm a system, but different types work in very different ways. Security exams test whether you can tell them apart, especially by how each one spreads or gets inside a machine. The 4 types you need to know are the virus, the worm, the Trojan, and ransomware. Each attacks or spreads through its own signature behavior, and those differences are exactly what exam questions probe. The most tested distinction is virus versus worm. A virus must attach to a host file and can only move when that file is shared or run. A worm needs no host at all. It copies itself automatically across a network with no user action required. Exam scenarios use signal words to point you toward the right answer. If the malware rides along on a shared file, think virus. If it races across machines on its own, think worm. Disguise means Trojan. Extortion after infection means ransomware. When a question stresses that malware moved automatically across machines without anyone opening a file or clicking anything, that self-propagation is the worm's defining trait, and that single detail separates it from every other type. Question 28. An employee receives an email that appears to come from the company's bank, urging her to click a link and verify her account password. The message is fake and is designed to trick her into handing over her login information. Which type of threat is this? Your options are A. A denial of service attack. B. Hacking directly into the bank servers. C. Phishing. D. A worm infection. Which would you go with? Lock it in before the reveal. The correct answer is C. Phishing. C is correct because phishing uses fake emails or websites to trick people into revealing information such as passwords or account numbers. A deceptive email impersonating the bank to capture login details is a textbook phishing attempt. A is wrong because a denial of service attack floods a system with traffic to make it unavailable, not to trick a person into sharing credentials. No service is being overwhelmed in this scenario. B is wrong because hacking breaks directly into a system without authorization, whereas phishing manipulates a person into handing over access. This attack targets the employee through deception, not the servers directly. D is wrong because a worm is self-spreading malware, not a deceptive message aimed at a person. The threat here relies on tricking the employee, which is phishing. Two of the most common cybersecurity threats are phishing and hacking. They both aim at gaining improper access, but they attack very different targets, and that difference is everything. Phishing targets a person, using fake emails or websites to trick someone into handing over passwords or credentials. Hacking targets a system directly, forcing or sneaking past its defenses without any help from a user. In phishing, the attacker never breaks in by force. The victim is manipulated into volunteering the very credentials the attacker wants. In hacking, the attacker exploits a flaw in the system itself and forces a way in directly. Several related terms round out the picture. Cybercrime is illegal online data theft broadly. Cyberterrorism aims to cause disruption or harm. A denial of service attack floods a system to knock it offline, while worms and viruses are self-spreading malicious code. The quickest way to tell them apart, ask whether a human was fooled or a system was forced. A deceptive message luring someone into giving up a password is phishing. An intruder slipping past technical defenses to reach a server directly is hacking. Question 23. A video streaming service offered a simpler, cheaper way to watch movies at home and gradually drew customers away from established video rental chains until those chains closed. This pattern, in which a simpler and less expensive innovation creates a new market and displaces industry leaders, is best described as your options are A. Sustaining innovation, B. Disruptive innovation, C. Incremental product improvement, D. Benchmarking. Don't overthink it. Which one feels right? The correct answer is B. Disruptive innovation. B is correct because disruptive innovation is a simpler, cheaper innovation that creates a new market and value and eventually displaces established industry leaders. A streaming service that replaced video rental chains is a classic case. A is wrong because sustaining innovation improves an existing product for current customers without overturning the market. This scenario describes a newcomer displacing incumbents, which is disruptive, not sustaining. C is wrong because incremental product improvement makes small refinements to an existing offering. It does not capture the creation of a new market that drives established competitors out of business. D is wrong because benchmarking is comparing a company's processes to industry leaders in order to improve. It is an improvement method, not a type of market displacing innovation. Disruptive innovation is more than just a new technology. It's a specific pattern where a simpler, cheaper newcomer reshapes an entire market. Understanding exactly what qualifies as disruptive is what separates the concept from ordinary progress. Disruptive innovation has three defining features. It must be simpler and cheaper. It must open a new market or reach customers the leaders ignored. And it must ultimately push those leaders out. Any innovation missing one of these conditions is not truly disruptive. The pattern is consistent across history. A disruptive entrant begins with a low-end foothold, appealing to buyers the incumbents overlook. Over time it improves, crosses into the mainstream market, and eventually achieves full displacement of the once dominant players. Sustaining innovation is the contrast to keep in mind. It refines an existing product for current buyers without overturning the market. Disruptive innovation does the opposite. It enters from below, creates new customers, and displaces the incumbents entirely. When identifying disruptive innovation, look for the signal words simpler and cheaper, a new market, new customers, and displaced industry leaders. If the innovation merely improves what already exists for the same buyers, it's sustaining, not disruptive. Question 24. A fast food restaurant adds a drive-through window along a busy commuter route so customers can buy a meal at a spot that is convenient for them. Which type of utility is the restaurant primarily creating? Your options are A. Form utility, B. Time utility, C. Ownership utility, D. Place utility. Got a guess? Lock it in. The correct answer is D. Place utility. D is correct because place utility is created by making a product available where customers want it, such as a convenient location. A drive-through positioned on a commuter route adds value through convenient location, which is place utility. A is wrong because form utility comes from putting a product into a usable form and is created mainly by production, such as turning flour into bread. It is not about where the product is sold. B is wrong because time utility comes from making a product available when customers want it, such as a store open around the clock. The scenario stresses the convenient location, not timing. C is wrong because ownership utility comes from making it easy to transfer ownership to the buyer, such as accepting convenient payment. The drive-through adds value through location, not the transfer of ownership. Utility is simply the value a good or service provides by satisfying a customer's wants and needs. Marketers identify 4 distinct types of utility, each representing a different way. Value is added as a product moves from raw materials to a satisfied buyer. Form utility comes from turning raw materials into a finished product. That's the work of production. Time utility means the product is available when the customer wants it. Place utility means it's available where they want it. And ownership utility is created when the transfer from seller to buyer is smooth and easy. The critical distinction is who creates each type. Production creates form utility through manufacturing. Marketing creates the other 3, time, place, and ownership, by making goods available at the right moment, in the right location, and easy to purchase. Place utility deserves special attention because it appears so often in exam scenarios. Whenever a business closes the gap between where a product is made and where a customer wants to buy it, through a drive-through, a nearby outlet, or convenient distribution, it is creating place utility. The signal words make sorting straightforward. When wanted means time utility. Where wanted means place utility. Easy payment means ownership utility. And a finished usable form means form utility, the one type marketing never creates. Question 25. A consumer goods company is deciding which wholesalers and shipping arrangements will best get its product onto store shelves across the country quickly. Within the marketing mix, which of the 4 P's is the company working on? Your options are A. Place, B. Product, C. Promotion, D. Price. Which one is it? Pause the video if you need more time. The correct answer is A. Place. A is correct because in the marketing mix, place refers to distribution, the channels and logistics that move a product to customers. Choosing wholesalers and shipping to reach store shelves is a distribution decision, which is place. B is wrong because product covers the features, design, quality, and packaging of what is sold. The company is deciding how to deliver the product, not what the product itself is. C is wrong because promotion is how a company communicates value through advertising, selling, and similar tools. Selecting wholesalers and shipping is about distribution, not messaging. D is wrong because price is what customers pay and the pricing approach used. The decision here concerns moving goods through channels, not setting a price. The marketing mix is the set of controllable tools a company blends to satisfy its target market. These tools are organized into 4 categories. The 4 P's and marketing success depends on how they're combined, not on any single one alone. Each P answers a different question. Product covers what you sell, including features, design, and packaging. Price is the only P that brings in revenue rather than creating cost. Place covers distribution, the channels moving goods to customers. Promotion covers advertising, selling, and public relations. Place is the most frequently misread P in everyday speech. Place suggests a street address. But in the marketing mix, place means distribution, the channels, intermediaries, and logistics that move a product from the producer all the way to the customer. Signal words help you sort decisions quickly on an exam. Features and packaging point to product. Discounts and pricing approach point to price. Channels, wholesalers, and shipping point to place. Advertising and the marketing message point to promotion. The single most useful habit on this topic is tying place firmly to distribution. Any decision about getting goods through channels to customers is a place decision, and remembering that keeps all 4 P's straight. Question 26. To better understand its customers, a company designs and conducts its own original survey, gathering responses firsthand specifically for this project. Which kind of data is the company collecting? Your options are A. Secondary data, B. Big data already published by others, C. Primary data, D. Data mining results. Take a second. Which answer would you pick? The correct answer is C. Primary data. C is correct because primary data is new information collected firsthand for a specific purpose through methods such as surveys, interviews, or observation. A company running its own survey for this project is gathering primary data. O is wrong because secondary data is information already collected and published by someone else, such as industry reports or government statistics. A survey the company conducts itself is original, not second-hand. B is wrong because information published by others is secondary data, the opposite of what is described. The company is generating its own data rather than using already published sources. D is wrong because data mining is analyzing existing data to find patterns, not the act of collecting new responses. The company is gathering fresh survey data, which is primary data. Marketing research relies on two categories of data, and understanding the difference comes down to one simple question: who collected it, and for what purpose? Primary data is original information gathered directly by the researcher for the current project. Through surveys, interviews, focus groups, or observation. Secondary data already exists, published earlier by others in sources like government reports or industry studies. The trade-off shapes how researchers work. Primary data fits the question closely but costs more time and money. Secondary data is inexpensive and quick but may not match the exact need. Researchers often start with secondary data, then turn to primary when they need tailored answers. Think of it visually. Primary data flows directly from the researcher into the project, while secondary data is drawn from sources that already exist out in the world, gathered earlier by someone else for a different purpose. The signal words make it easy. First-hand, original, and conducted by the company mean primary. Already published, government statistics and industry reports mean secondary. Who collected it first decides everything. Question 27. A marketer divides the consumer market into groups based on age, income, gender, and household size. Which segmentation base is the marketer using, and how common is it for consumer markets? Your options are: A. Geographic segmentation, the most common consumer base. B. Psychographic segmentation based on lifestyle and values. C. Behavioral segmentation based on usage and loyalty. D. Demographic segmentation, the most common consumer base. Before I reveal it, which one do you think is right? The correct answer is D. Demographic segmentation, the most common consumer base. D is correct because demographic segmentation divides buyers by socio-economic traits such as age, income, gender, and household size, and it is the most commonly used base for consumer markets. The variables listed are textbook demographic factors. A is wrong because geographic segmentation divides a market by location, such as region or climate, not by age or income. It is also not identified as the most common consumer base, so this option is wrong on both counts. B is wrong because psychographic segmentation divides buyers by lifestyle, attitudes, and values. The traits listed are demographic facts, not lifestyle measures. C is wrong because behavioral segmentation divides buyers by their relationship to the product, such as usage rate or loyalty. Age, income, and household size are demographic, not behavioral variables. Market segmentation divides a broad market into smaller, homogeneous groups so companies can serve each one more precisely. 4 standard bases apply to consumer markets, and understanding what each one measures is the key skill being tested. Geographic segmentation groups buyers by where they live. Demographic segmentation groups them by concrete, measurable traits like age, income, gender, and household size. Psychographic segmentation reaches past those facts to lifestyle and values. Behavioral segmentation divides buyers by their relationship to the product, including usage rate, loyalty, and purchase timing. The pair most often confused is demographic and psychographic. The dividing line is simple. Demographic captures concrete facts about who a buyer is, while psychographic captures inner values and lifestyle. Demographic is also the most commonly used base for consumer markets. Business markets are segmented somewhat differently. End-use segmentation, which focuses on exactly how a business buyer will apply the product, is a key approach. Importantly, psychographic segmentation based on personal lifestyle and values is characteristic of consumer markets and is not a standard method for business buyers. When a scenario lists age, income, or gender, that is demographic. Regional climate points to geographic. Lifestyle and values point to psychographic. Usage, loyalty, or purchase timing points to behavioral. Spotting the signal word settles the base every time. Question 28. A consumer is willing to drive across town and will accept no substitute in order to buy one particular brand of luxury watch, a purchase made infrequently and only after considerable effort. How is this product classified? Your options are A. A convenience product, B. A specialty product, C. A shopping product, D. An unsought product. What's your answer? Commit to one before I continue. The correct answer is B. A specialty product. B is correct because a specialty product is one the buyer will make a special effort to obtain and for which no reasonable substitute is acceptable. The willingness to travel and accept no other brand of luxury watch is the hallmark of a specialty product. A is wrong because a convenience product is bought frequently, immediately, and with little effort, such as milk or a newspaper. The special effort and refusal of substitutes here are the opposite of convenience buying. C is wrong because a shopping product is bought only after comparing competing products across several stores. This buyer is not comparing options, they insist on one brand which points to a specialty product. D is wrong because an unsought product is one consumers do not think about buying until a need arises, such as towing service. The buyer here actively seeks out a specific desired item, so it is not unsought. Marketers classify consumer products into 4 categories based on how much effort and involvement a buyer brings to the purchase. Understanding these categories is one of the most heavily tested concepts in marketing. Convenience products are grabbed routinely with almost no thought. Shopping products involve comparing price, quality, and features across stores. Specialty products require a special effort to obtain with no substitute accepted. Unsought products aren't considered at all until a specific need suddenly arises. The most tested distinction is between specialty and shopping products. A shopping buyer compares several options. A specialty buyer insists on one specific brand, refuses substitutes, and will go out of their way to get it. Train yourself to spot the signal words. Frequent and immediate point to convenience. Compared across stores points to shopping. Special effort combined with refusal of substitutes is the hallmark of a specialty product, and that pairing is what exam writers test most. When a question describes a buyer who compares options, that's shopping. When the buyer refuses any alternative and makes a special effort for one brand, that's specialty, regardless of price or prestige. Question 29. A product's sales are climbing rapidly. The company is finally earning its first profits on the product, and new competitors are entering the market to grab a share. Which stage of the product life cycle does this describe? Your options are A. Growth, B. Maturity, C. Introduction, D. Decline. Pick one. Trust your gut. Here's your chance to test yourself. The correct answer is A. Growth. A is correct because in the growth stage, sales climb quickly. The product begins earning its first profits, and competitors enter the market. Rising sales with initial profits and new rivals is the signature of the growth stage. B is wrong because in maturity, industry sales level offered a saturation point and competition is most intense. Rather than sales climbing rapidly, the first profits and fast growth described here come earlier in the growth stage. C is wrong because in introduction, the product is new, demand is just being built, and the company is usually not yet profitable. The scenario describes a product that is already profitable and growing, which is past introduction. D is wrong because in decline, both sales and profits fall and the market shrinks. The scenario describes rising sales and new profits, the opposite of decline. Every product moves through a predictable sequence of 4 stages, each with its own pattern of sales, profits, and a competition. Understanding these stages helps you identify where a product stands just from a description of how it's performing. The 4 stages are introduction, growth, maturity, and decline. In introduction, the product is new and not yet profitable. In growth, sales climb fast and first profits arrive. In maturity, sales flatten and competition peaks. In decline, both sales and profits fall. Plotted over time, the sales curve rises slowly at introduction, climbs steeply through growth, levels off at maturity, and then falls during decline. The profit line follows a similar arc but lags slightly behind, starting negative before turning positive in the growth stage. The most tested distinction is growth versus maturity. Growth features rapidly rising sales, the arrival of first profits, and new competitors entering the market. Maturity features a sales plateau at peak levels and fierce competition among established rivals fighting over a fixed pool of customers. Marketers try to stretch a product's profitable life through extension strategies like finding new uses, attracting new users, or refreshing the packaging. But first you have to know which stage you're in, and the signal words make that clear. Question 30. An independently owned distributor buys products from manufacturers, takes legal title to the goods, stores them in its warehouse, and then resells them to retailers. Which type of intermediary is this? Your options are A. An agent, B. A broker, C. A merchant wholesaler, D. A manufacturer's sales office. Which would you go with? Lock it in before the reveal. The correct answer is C. A merchant wholesaler. C is correct because a merchant wholesaler is an independently owned intermediary that takes legal title to the goods it handles and resells them. Buying, taking title, warehousing, and reselling to retailers is exactly what a merchant wholesaler does. A is wrong because an agent brings buyers and sellers together but never takes legal title to the goods. Because this distributor takes title, it is a merchant wholesaler, not an agent. B is wrong because a broker, like an agent, only connects buyers and sellers and never takes title. The taking of legal title here rules out a broker. D is wrong because a manufacturer's sales office is owned by the producer, not independently owned, and it does not take title as a separate reseller. This distributor is independent and takes title, which makes it a merchant wholesaler. Wholesalers are intermediaries that move goods between producers and buyers, but they're not all the same. The single most important distinction is a legal one. Does the intermediary actually take title to the goods it handles? There are 3 broad categories: merchant wholesalers, agents and brokers, and manufacturer-owned outlets like sales branches and sales offices. Each plays a different role and has a different relationship to the goods being sold. A merchant wholesaler takes legal title. It buys the goods outright, stores them, bears the risk, and resells them for profit. An agent or broker never takes title. Instead, it connects buyers and sellers and earns a commission without ever owning the inventory. Visually, the merchant wholesaler sits in the middle of the supply chain as an owner. Goods flow through its warehouse. The agent or broker sits to the side, facilitating the deal without the goods ever belonging to them. When an exam question describes someone buying, warehousing, and reselling, that's a merchant wholesaler. Connecting parties and earning a commission without ownership points to an agent or broker. Title is the deciding fact every time. Question 31. A manufacturer of a low-price soft drink wants its product available in as many outlets as possible, including grocery stores, gas stations, and vending machines, so customers can grab it almost anywhere. Which distribution intensity strategy fits this convenience product? Your options are A. Exclusive distribution, B. Intensive distribution, C. Selective distribution. D. Direct distribution. Don't overthink it. Which one feels right? The correct answer is B. Intensive distribution. B is correct because intensive distribution places a product in nearly every available outlet and suits low-price convenience goods that customers buy on impulse. A soft drink sold everywhere from gas stations to vending machines is the textbook use of intensive distribution. A is wrong because exclusive distribution limits coverage to one or a few outlets in an area and suits expensive specialty products like luxury watches. It is the opposite of selling a soft drink everywhere. C is wrong because selective distribution uses a limited number of retailers and suits shopping goods such as clothing or appliances. A convenience good meant to be available everywhere calls for intensive, not selective coverage. D is wrong because direct distribution describes selling straight from producer to customer without intermediaries, which is a channel choice rather than a level of market coverage. The question asks about intensity, which is intensive. Distribution intensity describes how many outlets a manufacturer uses to reach customers. The right level depends entirely on the type of product and how consumers shop for it, and matching them correctly is a core marketing principle. There are exactly 3 levels. Intensive distribution places a product everywhere possible. Selective distribution uses a limited number of carefully chosen retailers. Exclusive distribution limits coverage to just one or a few outlets per region. The key is matching the intensity to the product type. Convenience goods like snacks and soft drinks call for intensive coverage. Shopping goods like appliances call for selective coverage. Specialty and luxury goods demand exclusive coverage to protect scarcity and brand image. Spreading a luxury product across every outlet would erode the very exclusivity that gives it value. Intensive and exclusive distribution are opposites by design. One maximizes reach, the other protects prestige through scarcity. When reading a scenario, look for the signal words. Available everywhere points to intensive. Limited retailers points to selective. One or few outlets points to exclusive. Note that this is separate from the direct versus indirect channel decision entirely. Question 30. A company markets bandages, facial wash, and pain medication all under the same single brand name that customers already recognize and trust. Which branding strategy is the company using? Your options are A. Individual branding, B. Private branding, C. Generic branding, D. Family branding. Got a guess? Lock it in. The correct answer is D. Family branding. D is correct because family branding uses one brand name across a group of related products. Selling bandages, facial wash, and medication under a single trusted name is exactly how family branding works. A is wrong because individual branding gives each product its own separate name, so it can stand on its own. The company here uses one shared name, not distinct names, so it is not individual branding. B is wrong because a private brand is manufactured for and sold under a specific retailer's name, such as a store's own label. These products carry the company's own single brand, not a retailer's label. C is wrong because a generic brand uses plain, no-name packaging with no brand identity. The scenario relies on a recognized, trusted name, which is the opposite of generic. When companies build product identity, 3 foundational terms come into play: brand, brand name, and trademark. These concepts nest inside one another, and understanding how they relate, along with the major brand categories, is essential for sorting out common exam questions. The brand is the broadest concept, the entire identity a company presents, from logo and colors to meaning in customers' minds. The brand narrows to just the spoken words. The trademark narrows further still to whatever element the law protects from use by others. Brands also fall into 5 strategic categories. A manufacturer's brand carries the producer's own name. A private brand is sold under a retailer's label. A family brand uses one name across related products. An individual brand gives each product its own name. A generic brand uses plain, no-name packaging. The most tested distinction is between family, individual, and private branding. Family branding uses one trusted name across many related products, lowering launch costs and transferring existing reputation. Individual branding assigns each product its own identity. A private brand belongs to the retailer, not the manufacturer. The signal words unlock the right answer every time. Whole identity points to brand. Spoken words point to brand name. Legal protection points to trademark name. And one name spanning many related products points to family branding. Lock in those cues and the distinctions become automatic. Question 33. A technology company launches a brand new gadget at an intentionally high price to capture maximum profit from eager early adopters, planning to lower the price gradually as the product reaches a broader market. Which pricing strategy is this? Your options are A. Penetration pricing, B. Everyday low pricing, C. Skimming pricing, D. Loss leader pricing. Which one is it? Pause the video if you need more time. The correct answer is C. Skimming pricing. C is correct because skimming sets a high initial price to maximize profit from early adopters, then lowers it over time as the market widens. A new gadget priced high at launch and reduced later is a classic skimming strategy. A is wrong because penetration pricing sets a low price to enter a market and gain share quickly, the opposite of starting high. The company here begins with a high price, so it is skimming, not penetration. B is wrong because everyday low pricing keeps prices continuously low rather than starting high and lowering them. The planned high launch price rules out everyday low pricing. D is wrong because loss leader pricing sets one item very low, even at a loss, to draw customers in. A premium launch price aimed at early adopters is the opposite of a loss leader. Two of the most tested pricing strategies sit at opposite ends of the spectrum. Both answer the same question, what to charge for a new product, but in completely opposite ways. Skimming launches at a high price to capture eager early adopters willing to pay a premium, then gradually lowers the price to reach more buyers. Penetration does the reverse, launching low to grab market share quickly and crowd out rivals before they can respond. Visually, skimming traces a high to low price curve as the market widens, while penetration holds a low price to accumulate volume. The direction of that launch price is the key signal examiner's test. Other strategies each serve a distinct goal. Competitive pricing avoids price wars. Everyday low pricing stays consistently low. A loss leader draws customers in. Dynamic pricing responds to shifting demand. When reading a scenario, anchor on the launch price direction. A premium opening price lowered over time is skimming. A cheap opening price designed to seize the market is penetration. Keeping that contrast clear eliminates the most common error on pricing questions. Question 34. A toy company runs a large television advertising campaign aimed directly at children and parents so that they will go to stores and ask for the toy, prompting retailers to stock it. Which promotional strategy is this? Your options are A pulling strategy, B, a pushing strategy, C, personal selling to retailers, D, a trade promotion. Take a second. Which answer would you pick? The correct answer is A, a pulling strategy. A is correct because a pulling strategy creates consumer demand through advertising so that buyers request the product and pull it through the channel. A consumer ad campaign that drives shoppers to ask retailers for the toy is a pulling strategy. B is wrong because a pushing strategy promotes to channel members such as wholesalers and retailers using personal selling and trade promotions. This campaign targets end consumers, not the channel, so it pulls rather than pushes. C is wrong because personal selling to retailers is a tool of a pushing strategy aimed at the channel. The company here is advertising to consumers, not selling directly to retailers. D is wrong because a trade promotion offers incentives to retailers and wholesalers, again aimed at the channel. The toy campaign targets consumers directly, which makes it a pulling strategy. Every promotion strategy has a target, and that target determines whether you're pushing or pulling. Understanding the direction of effort is the key insight behind these two approaches. In a push strategy, the producer directs personal selling and trade promotions at wholesalers and retailers, incentivizing them to stock and sell the product down toward the customer. In a pull strategy, the producer advertises to end consumers, who then request the product from retailers, pulling it up through the channel. The clearest way to tell them apart is by asking who receives the promotion. Push efforts use trade deals and personal selling aimed at wholesalers and retailers. Pull efforts use advertising and consumer promotions aimed at final buyers. On an exam, look for signal words. Trade incentives and retailer deals signal a push. Consumer advertising that drives shoppers to ask for the product signals a pull. Many real campaigns blend both, but questions typically describe one dominant direction. When you see a promotion scenario, ask one question: is the company selling to the channel or creating demand among final buyers? That single test will tell you whether it's a push, a pull, or both. Question 35. A company has fixed costs of $120,000. It sells each unit for $40 and the variable cost per unit is $25. How many units must the company sell to break even? Your options are A. 3,000 units, B. 8,000 units, so 4,800 units, D. 12,000 units. Before I reveal it, which one do you think is right? The correct answer is B. 8,000 units. B is correct because break-even units equal fixed costs divided by the contribution margin, which is price minus variable cost. The contribution margin is $40 minus $25 or $15, and $120,000 divided by $15 equals 8,000 units. A is wrong because this answer divides fixed costs by the $40 price instead of by the contribution margin. The denominator must be price minus variable cost, not price alone, so it yields the wrong figure. C is wrong because this figure divides fixed costs by the $25 variable cost rather than by the contribution margin. The break-even formula uses price minus variable cost in the denominator, which gives 8,000 units. D is wrong because this answer uses a contribution margin of only $10, which comes from subtracting the wrong values. The correct margin is $40 minus $25 or $15, producing 8,000 units. Break-even analysis tells us exactly how many units a business must sell so that total revenue equals total cost. No profit, no loss. Understanding the formula requires separating two types of cost and then building the contribution margin that connects them. Fixed costs stay constant regardless of how much is produced. Rent and salaries don't change whether output is high or low. Variable costs move directly with volume, rising as more units are made. Keeping these two types distinct is the foundation of the entire break-even calculation. The contribution margin is the selling price per unit minus the variable cost per unit. It represents what each unit contributes toward covering fixed costs once its own variable cost is paid. The larger the contribution margin, the fewer units are needed to break even. Dividing fixed costs by the contribution margin per unit gives the break-even point in units. In our example, Fixed costs of $120,000 divided by a $15 contribution margin equals 8,000 units. At exactly 8,000 units, every dollar of fixed cost is covered and profit is zero. A frequent mistake is dividing fixed costs by the selling price alone, which ignores the variable cost each unit carries. The denominator must always be the contribution margin, price minus variable cost. Get that right, and the break-even formula works every time. Question 36. A manufacturer offers display allowances and volume discounts to the retailers and wholesalers that carry its products, rather than offering anything directly to end shoppers. Which type of sales promotion is this? Your options are A. A consumer promotion, B. Institutional advertising, C. A pulling strategy, D. A trade promotion. What's your answer? Commit to one before I continue. The correct answer is D. A trade promotion. D is correct because a trade promotion is a sales promotion aimed at retailers and wholesalers, using tools such as display allowances and volume discounts. Incentives offered to the channel rather than to shoppers define a trade promotion. A is wrong because a consumer promotion targets end buyers with tools like coupons, samples, and contests. These incentives go to retailers and wholesalers, not to shoppers, so it is a trade promotion. B is wrong because institutional advertising promotes a company's overall image rather than offering buying incentives. The scenario describes discounts and allowances to the channel, not image advertising. C is wrong because a pulling strategy uses consumer advertising to build demand, so buyers pull the product through the channel. Offering incentives to retailers is a push-oriented trade promotion, not a pull. Sales promotions are short-term incentives designed to encourage buying. What separates consumer promotions from trade promotions is simply who receives the incentive: the shopper at the end of the channel or the business in the middle of it. Consumer promotions flow directly to the final buyer, while trade promotions flow to the retailers and wholesalers who carry and resell the product. The recipient of the incentive is the defining distinction. Consumer promotions use tools like coupons, free samples, contests, sweepstakes, buy one get one offers, and loyalty rewards. Each one puts a direct incentive in the individual buyer's hands to prompt a purchase or trial. Trade promotions use tools like display allowances, volume discounts, trade show deals, and point-of-purchase support. These persuade retailers and wholesalers to stock, feature, and actively push the product to customers. The exam trap is reading any discount as a consumer offer. Always ask who holds the incentive. If it goes to shoppers, it is a consumer promotion. If it goes to retailers or wholesalers, it is a trade promotion, regardless of how it eventually affects the shelf price. Question 37. An accountant needs to make sure the company's books always balance using the fundamental accounting identity. Which equation must always hold true? Your options are A. Assets, liabilities plus owner's equity, B. Assets at revenue minus expenses, C. Owner's equity, it's assets plus liabilities, D. Liabilities to assets plus owner's equity. Pick one. Trust your gut. Here's your chance to test yourself. The correct answer is A. Assets, liabilities plus owner's equity. A is correct because the accounting equation states that assets equal liabilities plus owner's equity, and it must always balance. What a company owns equals what it owes plus the owner's stake, which is the basis of double entry accounting. B is wrong because revenue minus expenses equals net income, which appears on the income statement, not the accounting equation. This formula describes profit, not the balance of assets, liabilities, and equity. C is wrong because this version rearranges the terms incorrectly. owner's equity equals assets minus liabilities, not assets plus liabilities. Adding liabilities to assets overstates the owner's stake. D is wrong because liabilities equal assets minus owner's equity, not assets plus owner's equity. This arrangement does not keep the equation in balance. The accounting equation is the foundation of all of accounting. Assets equal liabilities plus owner's equity. It says that everything a company owns is financed either by what it owes to others or by the owner's stake in the business. Each term has a distinct meaning. Assets are everything of value the company controls: cash, equipment, inventory, buildings. Liabilities are obligations to outside creditors: loans, supplier bills, wages payable. Owner's equity is the residual claim, what would remain for the owners after every liability is paid. On the balance sheet, assets sit on one side and liabilities plus owner's equity side on the other. The two sides must always be equal. This is not a coincidence, but a direct consequence of double entry bookkeeping, where every transaction touches at least two accounts with perfectly offsetting entries. Think of buying a house. The home is your asset, the mortgage is a liability, and your down payment is your equity. The value of the house always equals the mortgage balance plus your personal stake. The same logic governs every company's balance sheet. One common trap is mixing up the accounting equation with the income statement formula. Revenue minus expenses equals net income. The accounting equation describes what a firm owns and owes at a point in time, while net income measures profit over a period. Keep those two identities separate. Question 38. A chief executive notices that revenue has been rising steadily, yet profits have stayed flat, and she suspects an unexpected increase in costs is eating the margin. Which financial statement should she examine to investigate? Your options are A. The balance sheet, B. The statement of cash flows, C. The income statement, D. The statement of owner's equity. Which would you go with? Lock it in before the reveal. The correct answer is C, the income statement. C is correct because the income statement reports revenues, expenses, and the resulting profit over a period, so it reveals where rising costs are squeezing margins. To compare revenue against expenses and find a cost increase, the income statement is the right report. A is wrong because the balance sheet shows what a company owns and owes at a point in time, not the flow of revenues and expenses. It would not directly reveal why profit is flat despite rising sales. B is wrong because the statement of cash flows tracks the sources and users of cash, not the relationship between revenue and expenses. A margin problem caused by rising costs is best seen on the income statement. D is wrong because the statement of owner's equity reports changes in the owner's stake over a period. It does not break down revenues and expenses to expose a cost increase. The income statement is one of 4 financial statements, and it has a specific job, reporting how profitable a company was over a period of time. Understanding its structure helps you know exactly when to use it. The income statement follows one core relationship. Revenue minus expenses equals net income. Revenue is what a company earns from sales. Expenses are the costs to generate those sales. And net income is what remains, or a net loss if costs exceed revenue. Companies prepare 4 financial statements, each built for a different purpose. The income statement covers profitability over a period. The balance sheet shows what a firm owns and owes at a single point in time. The cash flow statement tracks sources and users of cash. The owner's equity statement shows how the owner's stake changed. The key skill is matching an inquiry to the right statement. Signal words guide you. Revenue, expenses, profit or margins point to the income statement. Owns and owes point to the balance sheet. Cash movement points to the cash flow statement. Changes in the owner's stake point to the owner's equity statement. Whenever a scenario involves rising costs, lagging profits, or squeezed margins, The income statement is the tool to reach for. It is uniquely built to set revenues against expenses and reveal exactly where the difference went. Question 39. Among the four financial statements, one reports a company's financial position at a single point in time and carries its balances over from year to year, while the other three cover a period and are closed out at the end of each fiscal year. Which statement is the permanent one? Your options are the income statement, B, the balance sheet, C, the statement of cash flows, D, the statement of owner's equity. Don't overthink it. Which one feels right? The correct answer is B. The balance sheet. B is correct because the balance sheet is the only permanent financial statement, reporting financial position at a point in time and carrying its balances forward year to year. The income, cash flows, and owner's equity statements cover a period and are closed out annually. A is wrong because the income statement is a temporary statement covering a period of revenues and expenses, and it is closed out each year. It does not carry balances forward like the balance sheet. C is wrong because the statement of cash flows is also temporary, summarizing cash movement over a period before resetting. It is not the permanent point-in-time statement. D is wrong because the statement of owner's equity is temporary as well, showing changes in equity across a period. Only the balance sheet is permanent. Financial statements don't all work the same way. One key structural divide separates the balance sheet from the other three statements, and it's one of the most reliably tested distinctions in accounting. Every company reports through four statements: the balance sheet, the income statement, the statement of owner's equity, and the statement of cash flows. They share data but serve distinct purposes. The balance sheet reports a company's financial position at a single point in time, listing assets, liabilities, and owner's equity on one specific date. Because those balances carry forward into the next period, it's called the permanent statement. The other three statements are temporary because each covers a span of time, a period, and their balances are reset to zero at year end, so the next period starts fresh. The exam tests two related contrasts: point in time versus over a period, and balances carried forward versus reset to zero. The balance sheet is the lone permanent statement, a photograph of one moment, while the income, owner's equity, and cash flow statements are temporary recordings that close out every year. Question 40. A company reports an asset test ratio of 1.0, inventory of $5 million, and current liabilities of $10 million. Using the asset test formula, what are the company's total current assets? Your options are A, $5 million, B, $10 million, C, $20 million, D, $15 million. Got a guess? Lock it in. The correct answer is D, $15 million. D is correct because the asset test ratio equals current assets minus inventory divided by current liabilities. Setting that equal to 1.0 gives current assets minus $5 million equals $10 million. So current assets equal $15 million. A is wrong because this figure simply repeats the inventory amount rather than solving the formula. The asset test relationship requires adding inventory back to the quick assets, which yields $15 million. B is wrong because this figure equals current liabilities alone, ignoring the inventory that must be added back. Quick assets of $10 million plus $5 million of inventory give $15 million in current assets. C is wrong because this answer doubles the liabilities and does not satisfy the formula. Substituting $20 million would give an asset test ratio of 1.5, not the 1.0 stated in the problem. Financial ratios convert raw financial statement numbers into meaningful measures of company health. They fall into four families: and understanding which family a ratio belongs to is the first step to applying it correctly. The 4 families are liquidity, activity, profitability, and leverage. Liquidity ratios focus on short-term survival, whether a firm can meet its immediate obligations. The acid test ratio is one of the strictest liquidity measures. The current ratio counts all current assets, including inventory. The acid test is stricter. It removes inventory because inventory cannot always be converted to cash quickly at full value. What remains are the truly quick assets: cash, short-term investments, and receivables. The formula is current assets minus inventory divided by current liabilities. In a worked example, if the acid test ratio is 1.0, inventory is 5 million, and current liabilities are 10 million, then current assets minus 5 million divided by 10 million equals 1. So current assets equal $15 million. Quick assets of 10 million exactly match the 10 million in current liabilities, confirming a ratio of 1.0. The single most important distinction is this: the acid test removes inventory while the current ratio keeps it. That one difference defines the formula, drives its rearrangement, and is the trap most often missed on exams. Question 41. An accountant records depreciation on a delivery truck each year. Which statement best describes what depreciation represents? Your options are A monthly cash payment the company makes to a lender. B, an increase in the truck's market value over time. C, the allocation of the asset's cost over its useful life, recorded as a non-cash expense. D, a reduction in the company's sales revenue for the period. Which one is it? Pause the video if you need more time. The correct answer is C. The allocation of the asset's cost over its useful life, recorded as a non-cash expense. C is correct because depreciation allocates the cost of a long-lived asset over its useful life and is recorded as a non-cash expense, since no cash actually leaves the company when it is booked. Spreading the truck's cost across the years it is used is exactly what depreciation does. A is wrong because depreciation is not a cash payment to a lender. It is an accounting allocation. No cash changes hands when depreciation is recorded, which is why it is called a non-cash expense. B is wrong because depreciation reduces the recorded value of an asset over time, rather than increasing its market value. It reflects using up the asset, not appreciation. D is wrong because depreciation is an expense tied to an asset, not a reduction in sales revenue. Revenue comes from selling goods and services and is unaffected by recording depreciation. Depreciation is one of the most misunderstood concepts in accounting. The key insight is that it is not a cash payment. It is the process of spreading an asset's cost across the years of its useful life. Depreciation allocates an asset's cost across the periods that benefit from using it. It is a non-cash expense. The cash already left the business at purchase, and depreciation simply assigns that cost to each period over time. Imagine a delivery truck bought once but used for yours. Charging its full cost to 1 year would distort that year's profit. Instead, depreciation divides the cost across the truck's useful life, giving each year a fair share of the expense. Exam questions often set traps around what depreciation is not. It is not a monthly cash payment to a lender, not an increase in the asset's market value, and not a reduction in sales revenue. It is purely a cost allocation recorded as a non-cash expense. Depreciation lives within accrual accounting, which matches expenses to the periods they help generate revenue, regardless of when cash changes hands. Whenever you see allocate cost over useful life or non-cash expense, you're looking at depreciation. Question 42. A company issues brand new shares of stock to the public for the first time in order to raise capital for expansion. In which type of financial market does this initial sale take place? Your options are A, the primary market, B, the secondary market, C. A non-depository institution. D. An electronic communications network. Take a second. Which answer would you pick? The correct answer is A. The primary market. A is correct because the primary market is where new securities are issued and sold for the first time, raising funds for the issuing company. An initial public sale of new shares to raise capital takes place in the primary market. B is wrong because the secondary market is where investors trade previously issued securities among themselves, and the issuing company receives no new money. A first-time sale of new shares is a primary market event, not a resale. C is wrong because a non-depository institution is a financial firm that does not take deposits. Such as an insurer, it is not a type of market. The question asks where the new shares are issued, which is the primary market. D is wrong because an electronic communications network is a platform for trading existing securities directly between parties. It facilitates secondary trading, not the original issuance of new shares. Financial markets split into two types based on a single key question. Is this security being sold for the very first time, or is it simply changing hands between investors? Three things determine which market you're in: whether a new security is being created, whether the proceeds flow to the issuer, and whether this is a first sale or a resale among investors. In the primary market, the issuer sells brand new securities directly, like an IPO, and receives the capital raised. In the secondary market, investors trade those existing securities among themselves on exchanges, and the original issuer receives nothing from those transactions. Exam questions hide the answer in the wording. Phrases like new issue, first time sale, and raises funds for the issuer signal the primary market. Resale among investors, previously issued, and trading on an exchange signal the secondary market. Every time, ask one question. Does new money reach the issuer? If yes, it's primary. If the money just moves between investors, it's secondary. That single test cuts through any variation an exam can throw at you. Question 43. An investor lends money to a corporation by purchasing its newly issued debt security, becoming a creditor entitled to interest payments rather than an owner of the company. Which type of security did the investor buy? Your options are A. Common stock, B. A share of equity, C. A mutual fund share, D. A bond. Before I reveal it, which one do you think is right? The correct answer is D. A bond. D is correct because a bond is a debt security, essentially a loan to a corporation or government, and its holder is a creditor who receives interest. Lending to the corporation as a creditor entitled to interest describes buying a bond. A is wrong because common stock represents ownership in a company, making the holder an owner rather than a creditor. The investor here is a lender entitled to interest, which is a bondholder, not a shareholder. B is wrong because a share of equity is another term for stock representing ownership, not a loan. The investor is a creditor, so the security is debt, not equity. C is wrong because a mutual fund share represents a stake in a pooled, diversified portfolio, not a direct loan to one corporation. The scenario describes lending to a single corporation, which is a bond. Securities represent financial claims, and the two most important kinds, bonds and stock, represent fundamentally different relationships between an investor and an issuer. Understanding that divide is the key to nearly every exam question on this topic. A bond is a debt security. The investor is a lender and becomes a creditor, entitled to fixed interest payments and repayment of principal. Stock is an equity security. The investor becomes an owner, sharing in the firm's profits through dividends and benefiting if the share price rises. Bondholders are paid before owners and face less risk, but their upside is capped at the agreed interest rate. Stockholders bear more risk and are paid after creditors, but they share in the firm's growth and typically gain voting rights in corporate decisions. Bonds come in types worth knowing. A government bond is issued by the National Treasury and carries very low risk, while a municipal bond is issued by a state or local government and often offers tax advantages on its interest payments. The signal words are your fastest tool: debt, creditor, and interest point to a bond, while ownership, dividends, and price appreciation point to stock. The trap exam writers set is blurring lending with owning. Always ask, is this investor a creditor receiving fixed interest or an owner sharing in the firm's fortunes? That single question resolves almost every bond versus stock scenario you will face. Question 44. To increase the money supply, the Federal Reserve buys government securities on the open market, putting money into the banking system. Which of the Fed's 3 monetary policy tools is being used? Your options are A. Changing the reserve requirement, B. Open market operations, C. Adjusting the discount rate, D. Setting fiscal policy. What's your answer? Commit to one before I continue. The correct answer is B. Open market operations. B is correct because open market operations are the Fed's buying and selling of government securities to expand or contract the money supply, and it is the most frequently used tool. Buying securities to inject money is a direct example of open market operations. A is wrong because changing the reserve requirement adjusts the minimum reserves banks must hold, a different tool that the Fed uses less often. The action described is the purchase of securities, which is open market operations. C is wrong because adjusting the discount rate changes the interest rate the Fed charges banks for loans, not the buying of securities. The scenario specifically involves purchasing government securities. D is wrong because fiscal policy involves government spending and taxes set by Congress and the President, not the Fed's money supply tools. Buying securities is monetary policy carried out through open market operations. The Federal Reserve uses 3 distinct tools to control the money supply and credit conditions in the U.S. economy. Each tool works through a different mechanism, and recognizing what each one does is a core skill for understanding monetary policy. Reserve requirements set the minimum funds banks must hold rather than lend. The discount rate is the interest rate the Fed charges banks for direct loans. Open market operations involve buying and selling government securities, and this is the Fed's most frequently used tool. When the Fed buys government securities, it injects money directly into the banking system, expanding the money supply. When it sells securities, it pulls money back out, contracting the supply. This flexibility makes open market operations the workhorse of monetary policy. The key is reading the signal words. Minimum reserves banks must hold points to reserve requirements. The rate the Fed charges banks for borrowing points to the discount rate. Buying or selling government securities always points to open market operations. Remember, all 3 tools are controlled by the Federal Reserve, which separates them from fiscal policy run by Congress. When you see government securities being bought or sold, that is open market operations, the Fed's most used and most tested tool. Question 45. An investor instructs a broker to buy a stock immediately at the best price currently available, accepting whatever that price turns out to be. Which type of order is this? Your options are A. A limit order, B. An insider trade, C. A market order, D. A primary offering. Pick one. Trust your gut. Here's your chance to test yourself. The correct answer is C. A market order. C is correct because a market order tells the broker to execute immediately at the best price available right now, accepting whatever the current price is. Buying without setting a price condition is a market order. A is wrong because a limit order executes only at a specified price or better, so it sets a price condition rather than accepting whatever the market offers. The investor here wants immediate execution at the going price, which is a market order. B is wrong because an insider trade is the illegal use of material non-public information to profit, not a normal order type. Nothing in this scenario involves confidential information. D is wrong because a primary offering is the original issuance of new securities by a company, not an instruction to buy at the best available price. The investor is placing a trade, not issuing new shares. When you place a trade, the order type you choose controls a fundamental trade-off: certainty of execution versus certainty of price. Understanding this distinction is essential for any investor. A market order executes immediately at the best available price. You get the trade done, but you don't control the exact price. A limit order executes only at a specified price or better. You control the price, but the trade may never fill. Think of it as a sliding scale. On one end, the market order guarantees the trade happens, but not the price. On the other, the limit order guarantees the price, but not that the trade happens at all. For a market order, the trade fills right away because the investor accepts whatever the current price is. For a limit order, the broker waits until the market reaches the investor's specified price, or the order simply doesn't fill. The exam queue is always the investor's priority. If they're accepting whatever the current price is, that's a market order. If they're insisting on a particular price or better, that's a limit order. Spot those signal words and you'll never confuse the two. Question 46. Within a company's finance function, one officer is responsible for managing the firm's cash, investments, and financing activities, focusing on raising and investing money. Which role is this? Your options are A, the treasurer, B, the controller, C, the chief executive officer, D, the marketing analyst. Which would you go with? Lock it in before the reveal. The correct answer is A, the treasurer. A is correct because the treasurer manages the firm's cash, investments, and financing, handling the raising and investing of money. Responsibility for cash and financing is the defining role of the treasurer. B is wrong because the controller handles accounting, financial reporting, and compliance, acting as the scorekeeper rather than managing cash and financing. The duties described are the treasurer's, not the controller's. C is wrong because the chief executive officer leads the entire company, not specifically the cash and financing function. Managing investments and financing is delegated to the treasurer under the chief financial officer. D is wrong because a marketing analyst studies markets and customers and has no role in managing company cash or financing. These finance duties belong to the treasurer. Every company's finance function follows a clear hierarchy, and knowing who does what is a classic exam topic. Let's break down the key roles and what distinguishes them from one another. The Chief Financial Officer sits at the top of the finance function, reporting directly to the CEO and overseeing the firm's overall financial strategy. Beneath the CFO, the Treasurer, Controller, and Financial Analyst each carry distinct responsibilities. The key distinction tested on exams is the split between the Treasurer and the Controller. The Treasurer handles the money, cash, investments, and financing, looking outward to markets and lenders. The Controller handles the books, accounting, reporting, and compliance, focused inward on the accuracy of financial records. Signal words make these roles easy to identify. Cash, investments, and financing point to the Treasurer. Accounting, reporting, and compliance point to the Controller. Overseeing financial strategy and reporting to the CEO points to the CFO. Supporting decisions with financial data points to a financial analyst. The simplest way to keep them straight: the Treasurer deals in funds and the Controller deals in records. Both report up to the CFO, who sets the strategy for the entire finance function. Question 47. A company borrows a large amount of money in order to increase the rate of return on the funds its owners have invested. This technique can amplify returns but also raises the firm's risk. What is it called? Your options are A. Diversification, B. Leverage, C. A divestiture, D. Synergy. Don't overthink it. Which one feels right? The correct answer is B. Leverage. B is correct because leverage is the use of borrowed funds to increase the rate of return on owners' invested money, and it raises risk along with potential return. Borrowing to amplify returns is the definition of leverage. A is wrong because diversification spreads investments across different assets to reduce risk, not a technique of borrowing to boost returns. It is about lowering risk, not the use of debt. C is wrong because a divestiture is the disposal of a business unit, such as a sell-off or spin-off, not a financing technique. It does not describe borrowing to raise returns. D is wrong because synergy is the idea that a combined company is worth more than its separate parts after a merger. It is unrelated to using debt to amplify owner returns. Leverage is the use of borrowed money to amplify the returns owners earn on their invested capital. Understanding why it raises both return and risk at the same time is the core idea here. Because the cost of debt is fixed, any return the borrowed money earns above its interest cost flows directly to owners, magnifying their gains. But those fixed interest obligations exist regardless of business performance, so losses are magnified equally. Visually, a firm's capital structure is simply the mix of debt and equity used to finance itself. The return on equity is amplified when the business earns more on borrowed funds than it pays in interest. That gap is where leverage creates value, and also where it creates danger. Leverage is distinct from its neighbors. Diversification spreads investments to reduce risk rather than borrow to boost returns. A divestiture sheds a business unit entirely. Only leverage specifically involves borrowing to amplify owner returns, and the amplification always cuts both ways. The key insight is that leverage is never one-sided. Higher potential return and higher potential loss are inseparable. Whenever you see borrowing paired with amplified owner outcomes, that is the signature of leverage. Question 48. A manufacturer needs to finance a new factory it expects to operate for 20 years. Although short-term financing usually carries a lower interest rate, the firm chooses long-term funds for this asset. Which reasoning best explains this choice? Your options are A. Short-term funds are always more expensive than long-term funds. B. Long-term funds never have to be repaid by the company. C. Short-term funds eliminate all financing risk for long-lived assets. D. Short-term funds expose the firm to more risk from frequent refinancing, so long-term assets are matched with long-term funds. Got a guess? Lock it in. The correct answer is D. Short-term funds expose the firm to more risk from frequent refinancing, so long-term assets are matched with long-term funds. D is correct because although short-term funds are usually cheaper, they must be refinanced often and expose the firm to interest rate and renewal risk. Firms therefore match long-lived assets with long-term funds to gain stability, which is why the factory is financed long-term. A is wrong because short-term funds are generally less expensive, not more expensive than long-term funds. The firm accepts the higher cost of long-term funds to reduce risk, so this reasoning is backward. B is wrong because long-term funds still must be repaid. They simply mature over a longer horizon. The claim that they never have to be repaid is false. C is wrong because short-term funds increase rather than eliminate risk for long-lived assets because of frequent refinancing. Far from removing risk, relying on short-term funds for a long-term asset adds it. When a company borrows money, the decision isn't just how much, it's how long. The core principle is to match the life of the financing to the life of the asset being funded. Short-term funds carry lower interest rates but require frequent refinancing. Long-term funds cost more but lock in financing, shielding the firm from swings in rates and credit availability. The hidden danger of short-term borrowing is refinancing risk. Each renewal exposes the firm to rising rates, tighter credit, and the threat of losing access to funds mid-project, even though the initial rate seemed attractive. A factory expected to operate for many years should be financed with long-term funds, so the financing lasts as long as the asset. Seasonal inventory, a short-term need, is correctly paired with short-term funds. Cost alone does not decide the financing choice. A firm accepts higher long-term rates to avoid the refinancing risk that short-term borrowing imposes on a long-lived asset. Matching financing life to asset life is the prudent exam-tested principle. Question 49. A large, financially strong corporation needs to raise a sizable amount of cash quickly. It issues unsecured short-term notes that require no collateral and typically carry interest rates lower than those a bank would charge. Which short-term funding source is this? Your options are A. Trade credit, B. A sovereign wealth fund, C. Commercial paper, D. A leveraged buyout. Which one is it? Pause the video if you need more time. The correct answer is C. Commercial paper. C is correct because commercial paper is unsecured. Short-term debt issued by large corporations that lets them raise sizable amounts at rates generally lower than bank loans. With no collateral, unsecured short-term notes priced below bank rates describe commercial paper. A is wrong because trade credit is credit extended by suppliers that lets a buyer pay later, not marketable notes sold to raise cash. The scenario involves issuing unsecured notes, which is commercial paper. B is wrong because a sovereign wealth fund is a government-owned investment fund, not a way for a corporation to borrow short-term. It is a source of investment capital, not a corporate funding instrument. D is wrong because A, leveraged buyout, is an acquisition financed largely with borrowed money, not a routine short-term funding tool. The firm here is simply raising short-term cash, which points to commercial paper. Companies often need cash for a short period, and there are three main sources they turn to: trade credit, short-term bank loans, and commercial paper. Each serves temporary needs but differs in cost, provider, and requirements. Trade credit arises when a supplier lets a buyer pay later, usually interest-free, making it the cheapest option. A short-term bank loan is straightforward borrowing from a financial institution, repaid with interest. Commercial paper is different. The corporation itself issues unsecured notes and sells them directly to investors. Commercial paper stands out because no collateral is pledged and rates typically fall below what banks charge. Only large corporations with strong credit reputations can issue it, but those that can raise sizable amounts of cash quickly. The signal words decide it every time. Paying suppliers later, usually interest-free, points to trade credit. Borrowing from a bank for a temporary need points to a short-term bank loan. Unsecured corporate notes at rates below banks point to commercial paper. When you see unsecured short-term notes issued by a corporation at rates below bank loans with no collateral, that is commercial paper, not a bank loan, and not trade credit. Question 50. A corporation disposes of one of its divisions by selling that division's assets outright to another company in exchange for cash. Which type of divestiture is this? Your options are A sell-off, B, a spin-off, C, a leveraged buyout, D, a merger that creates synergy. Take a second. Which answer would you pick? The correct answer is A, a sell-off. A is correct because a sell-off is a divestiture in which a company sells a unit's assets to another company, typically for cash. Selling the division outright to another firm for cash is exactly a sell-off. B is wrong because a spin-off creates a new, independent company from the divested assets, with the original shareholders becoming owners of the new entity rather than selling for cash. Because the assets are sold to another company here, it is a sell-off, not a spin-off. C is wrong because a leveraged buyout is an acquisition of a company financed mostly with borrowed money, not the sale of a single division for cash. The scenario describes shedding a unit, not buying a whole company with debt. D is wrong because a merger that creates synergy combines two companies, the opposite of disposing of a division. The corporation is selling off a unit, not merging with another firm. When companies reshape themselves, a handful of key terms describe the moves. Understanding synergy, leverage buyouts, and the two types of divestiture is essential, especially knowing exactly how a sell-off and a spin-off differ. Synergy is the value created when two firms combine, the idea that the merged company is worth more than each piece separately. A leveraged buyout, or LBO, is a specific acquisition where public shareholders are bought out using heavy borrowing, taking the company private. Divestitures come in two forms. In a sell-off, a unit's assets are sold outright to an outside company for cash. An external buyer ends up owning it. In a spin-off, a new independent company is created and its shares go directly to the original firm's shareholders, with no outside buyer involved. Visually, the sell-off sends the unit outward to a new owner in exchange for cash. The spin-off instead births a standalone firm whose shares stay with the people who already own the parent. No outside buyer, no direct cash payment for the unit. The decisive question is always, who ends up owning the unit? An outside buyer receiving assets for cash means sell-off. Original shareholders receiving shares in a new standalone firm means spin-off. Nail that distinction and the rest follows.
You have reached the end of our first question set. For the free complete exam preparation, visit our website, link in the description, where you find thousands more practice questions and comprehensive study guides. Thanks for studying with us today. See you in the next video.